headed to Georgia. Vice President Mike Pence weighs in on the race that will determine the balance of power in the Senate. Waiting for relief. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill continue to debate the best ways to aid Americans affected by the coronavirus. Greetings to Pope Francis. Why the Holy Father was popular on social media today. And the ambassador's story. A diplomat assigned to the Vatican tells us why he wrote a children's book inspired by a church in Rome. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, December 17th, 2020. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. As another vaccine nears approval, President Donald Trump is encouraging Americans to get vaccinated. And as voters in Georgia prepare to decide which party will control the Senate, Vice President Mike Pence heads to two rallies, while President-elect Joe Biden appears in a campaign ad in the Peach State. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, good evening to you. Tonight, President Trump is urging Americans to get those vaccinations to end the contagion once and for all. This, as another vaccine, is a step closer to getting the go-ahead.
Moderna's vaccine approval likely hours away. The markets hopeful on stimulus and vaccine news. President Donald Trump writing, all-time stock market high. The vaccine and the vaccine rollout are getting the best of reviews, moving along really well. Get those shots, everyone.
And when you pray, pray with confidence.
Meanwhile, in Georgia, the Senate race, Vice President Mike Pence tells GOP supporters, vote.
And we're going to keep fighting to hold the line in the United States Senate. We're going to win Georgia, and we're going to save America.
In this campaign ad for Democrats, President-elect Joe Biden promises Georgia this.
Georgia, I know things are tough right now, but I want you to know help is on the way. My administration is preparing to beat COVID-19 and get economic relief to the American people.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration will cut $200 million in federal health care funding to California. The state requires employers and private insurance plans to pay for abortion procedures.
We have informed California that this policy clearly violates federal conscience laws, but the state refuses to fix the issue and comply.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops approves of that move and looks ahead, too, writing in part, and because the right of freedom of conscience does not diminish as administrations change, we hope that today's actions to enforce these crucial federal conscience laws will be sustained until the violators come into compliance.
Also today in the Oval Office, President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump held a special signing ceremony. It authorizes a woman's suffrage monument in the nation's capital. 100 years ago, a woman won the right to vote. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
While staring down a government shutdown, congressional leaders appear close to cementing a new COVID-19 stimulus deal, but negotiations went into the night with no deal in place. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest. Eric?
Yeah, we're all waiting anxiously, Tracy. You know, this new deal would provide and give a boost to federal unemployment benefits and provide some Americans with another round of stimulus checks and give some businesses PPP money so that they could stay afloat. But many Republicans that I spoke with say some of the sticking points that are being worked out right now have nothing to do with real coronavirus relief.
The country needs Congress to come through with another targeted rescue package.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says for months he's called for bipartisan COVID relief to put hundreds of billions into payroll support, unemployment aid, along with testing and vaccine distribution. Today on the Senate floor, he says they're close, but may have to work through the weekend.
So I continue to appreciate our productive discussions, but I hope we also remember just how urgent the situation is for millions and millions of our fellow citizens. So for the information of all senators, we're going to stay right here, until we're finished.
The deal will include another round of stimulus checks, expanded unemployment benefits, and provide hundreds of billions in small business relief.
Hopefully, every member of the House and Senate see the economic
crisis that confronts our families, our individuals, and our small business.
But Capitol Hill sources tell me some of the snags include Democrats fighting for as much as $17 billion to help idle performing arts venues, similar to the $25 million House Speaker Nancy Pelosi got for the Kennedy Center in the last COVID relief package. And Republicans are worried about Democrats trying to use FEMA money for state and local funding, and individuals receiving the extra unemployment benefits on top of a stimulus check. The $900+ billion deal will likely be paired with a $1.4 trillion spending bill. To keep the government running, a shutdown deadline is looming Friday at midnight.
Let me say again, we are putting the final touches on what would be the largest stimulus in the history of the country, with the exception of the CARES Act.
Again, Leader McConnell and others say that they are close to the finish line, but one thing's for sure, either tonight or tomorrow, a temporary stopgap bill will have to be passed to prevent a government shutdown on Friday at midnight. From the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the mayor of Washington, D.C. is modifying her order that limits church attendance. Muriel Bowser is now restricting the number of people in church to either 250 or 25% of capacity. Last week, she ordered churches to limit attendance to just 50 people, sparking a lawsuit by the Archdiocese of Washington. And in Nevada, an appeals court rules that the state cannot limit indoor religious services differently from other businesses. The Ninth Court of Appeals says laws barring attendance at church, quote, strike at the very heart of the First Amendment's guarantee of religious liberty. And after the Supreme Court rejected New York's restrictions on churches, a Catholic healthcare ministry is calling for an end to all limits on houses of worship. In a statement, the Christ Medicus Foundation says in part, quote, now is the time for Americans to stand for the principle that our country must both safeguard public health and protect our fundamental right to religious freedom. With COVID-19 vaccines being administered in some countries, the permanent representative of the Holy See to the United Nations in Geneva says the Holy See is concerned about access to vaccines around the world.
So some countries are having more rights again than the other countries, and the Holy See must be attentive. We are doing all the best what we can that will protect the equal as possible as possible the distribution of the vaccine.
Archbishop Ivan Yurkovic attended a meeting earlier this month about patents and health with the World Intellectual Property Organization. He spoke to our colleague Christian Peschkin, the Geneva correspondent for EWTN Germany. The president of France has tested positive for COVID-19. Emmanuel Macron says that he will self-isolate for 7 days while continuing to work. The 42-year-old says that he took a test as soon as he began experiencing symptoms. Earlier this week, he met with top European leaders. Many of them are now self-isolating. A former papal representative to France has received an 8-month suspended criminal sentence. Archbishop Luigi Ventura was charged with sexual assault involving 5 men. The 76-year-old is considering whether to file an appeal. A Catholic priest in Nigeria kidnapped at gunpoint earlier this week has been released. The priest was abducted while he was on his way to attend his father's funeral. His congregation says they are praying for the conversion of his kidnappers. Just last week, the U.S. cited Nigeria and the terror group Boko Haram for its violations of religious freedom. Pope Francis says that there can be no peace without a culture of caring for others. In his message for the World Day of Peace, the Holy Father says the pandemic has brought people together, and we must come out of the coronavirus crisis together while pursuing the common good and promoting human dignity. The World Day of Peace will be celebrated on New Year's Day. Edward Habsburg is the Hungarian ambassador to the Holy See, and now he can add children's book author to his resume. He has written a book called Dubby about a double-headed eagle which has a connection to one of the ambassador's favorite churches in Rome.
Well, this is Santa Maria dell'Anima, and it is the church for all that remains of the Holy Roman Empire. And as the central symbol of the Holy Roman Empire was the double-headed eagle, the end of the church, there's a huge golden double-headed eagle with Our Lady, Mary on his knees. I would say there is two central messages. One of them is getting along with each other. These two heads always have different opinions. And at the beginning of the story, they bicker all the time. By the end of the story, they will have to learn to live with each other and be in harmony. This is something that ambassadors do all the time, but I think in the end it is about family. It is about that family is the most important thing in your life, that whatever happens in your life, your family is where you really belong.
And Dubby, the double-headed eagle, is now available. Coming up, priests in Poland hold a funeral mass for the unborn. Plus, a new model in the Archdiocese of Detroit. Families of parishes are explained. The U.S. Justice Department has filed a civil lawsuit against the University of Vermont Medical Center, alleging it forces staff members who object to abortion on religious grounds to participate in abortion procedures. In a written statement, Assistant Attorney General Eric Dryban of the Civil Rights Division says in part, quote, "This kind of indecent coercion violates everything this country stands for." Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, director of the Conscious Project, joins me now on Skype to take a closer look. Andrea, welcome back. Always so good to see you. Thanks for coming on. I know this is a story that we have been following since the first notice of violation against that hospital back in 2019. Can you remind us what the University of Vermont Medical Center allegedly did?
Well, this is a very interesting process that's been going on. It first came to light when a nurse who had been at the medical center for a very long time was asked when the center started to perform elective abortions, was assigned to participate in abortion. She actually was kind of tricked into it. She thought that she was going there to assist a woman for a different matter after a miscarriage, and one of the doctors even said, "Don't be mad at me." And when she found that she was in that situation, she looked and objected to the situation, wanted someone to relieve her. And she, unfortunately, there was no one that came. And instead, she had to participate in performing an abortion. She filed subsequently a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Health and Human Services, recounting this terrible situation and saying that this was something that wasn't just an isolated incident. The Office of Civil Rights conducted an investigation, found, as you mentioned, Tracy, a notice of violation, and it should have been the end of the story. There should have been a remediation. The university's medical center should have changed policy and practice, and it didn't. And instead, we now are at the situation where the Department of Justice has to step in and seek judicial relief to force this university medical center to abide by federal law and treat the conscience rights of its employees properly.
Andrea, what has the hospital's response been, and what, if any, corrective measures have been taken?
Well, like I mentioned before, it's been a long investigation done by the Department of Health and Human Services, and along the way, the university has dragged their feet, it seems. They've said that no, they're not really putting the conscience rights of employees that in jeopardy. But when you look at their policies and their practice, it looks like not above 10 nurses were even told they were scheduled to perform abortions, even though they had listed that they had objections to doing so. So this is something that they're being a little sneaky. There's been some press commentary from university officials saying that this is somehow a political situation that the administration is pursuing. But as we know, when it comes to conscience rights, it's a nonpartisan issue. It's an American issue to defend conscience rights.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrea, do we have any information? Is this a widespread problem?
You know, we've seen, everyone can remember the nurse at Mount Sinai in New York, and Caterina DiCarlo, and she, back in 2008, was similarly forced to perform an abortion. She filed suit against her employer, and unfortunately the court said that they're individuals can't file suit. It's a government issue. And so we don't know the extent to which this is happening. I think that there have been individual cases of healthcare workers filing complaints. And I'm really hoping that if this is happening at different places throughout the country, that this important case brought in Vermont reminds not only hospital administrators and schedulers and staffers, but also healthcare workers themselves of what their rights are under the law, so that this kind of situation doesn't happen and people aren't being forced into a surgical operating room against their wishes.
Andrea, thank you so much for coming on for your analysis. We always appreciate it. Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, Director of the Conscious Project. Thanks again.
It's my pleasure, Tracy. Thanks.
A church leader in Poland held a funeral mass for more than 600 unborn children. The service took place around 50 miles southeast of Warsaw. The bishop said the defenseless children deserved a worthy mass and a burial. The unborn included the bodies of babies who had died from stillbirths, miscarriages, and abortions. Approximately 1,000 legal abortions are carried out in Poland every year. Tonight on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, former NFL player and pro-life advocate Ben Watson weighs in on the Georgia Senate runoff election and the pro-abortion stance of Democratic candidate Reverend Raphael Warnock.
We all have blind spots, and some of our blind spots are more atrocious and life-ending than others. But my point there is even pastors need to be prayed for. Even people that are on the other side of this debate on abortion need to be prayed for.
Watson will be a speaker at the 2021 March for Life, and we have his reaction to the theme for next year's rally. That is tonight on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly at 10 p.m. Eastern, and for other airing times, check out EWTN.com. Up next, the barracks of the Pope's Swiss Guards receive a makeover. And more the nativity scenes set in by you, our viewers. The Archdiocese of Detroit is taking the next step in its move towards a new governance model for its parishes. The plan, announced by Archbishop Alan Vigneron, calls for all parishes of the Archdiocese of Detroit to join together to form new groupings called Families of Parishes over the next 2 years. Joining me now on Skype to tell us more is Monsignor Charles Kosanke, pastor of the Basilica of St. de Detroit and Most Holy Trinity parishes in Detroit. Monsignor, welcome back. Great to see you. And we really appreciate you speaking with us, especially since you're on vacation.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
Well, we know that you led a committee that offered recommendations for this initiative. Can you explain to us how the families of parishes will operate and what are some of its goals?
Yes, the family of parishes, the goal of family of parishes is more vibrant parishes. The diocese has 215 parishes, and they've been grouped into 51 families, anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 parishes, and these parishes are asked to work together to collaborate more intensely to provide various forms of ministry and services to the grouping of families. So this is really, this is about the mission of the church. The mission of the church continues as it has, from the time of the first Easter Commission. But over time, some of the structures changed in order to make the health mission to be stronger. So at this point, the Archbishop, looking at what other dioceses have done, looking at what we could do, we came up with this family of parishes concept. And so the goal is to further the mission of the church, but also to have more vibrant parishes, because more vibrant parishes attract people, whether unchurched or non-Catholic. And vibrant parishes have been indications that they also produce vocation. So this is seen as a very positive way to chart our future.
And I read that this will be the most significant change to parish structures in the Archdiocese since the 1960s. Why do this now, and what is it about this particular moment in time?
Okay, very good. Good question. the diocese had a synod in 1969 to try to implement the Second Vatican Council. And so a few years ago, Archbishop Vigneron prayed and really felt called to look at how to strengthen the spiritual life of the diocese. So he called a synod in 2016. So the first synod since 1969, which gathered about 400 clergy and lay people to discern what the Holy Spirit is telling us now in terms of how should our future should go. So out of this synod came a pastoral letter called Unleash the Gospel. And this letter indicated one of the foundational principles of this letter, which was published 3 years ago, was that change or conversion not only of people, but of structures. What should we be doing stronger or better? Now, obviously, when the Archbishop wrote that letter, he did not know what that meant. But in the past year, as we look at 90 less priests serving the diocese 10 years from now, and also that with the pandemic and also decline in church attendance, our finances have gotten weaker. This was the time to do something positive to try to address these negative factors. The other factor, I think, for the Archbishop is that he retires in 3 years, and he really would like the foundation to be set prior to his retirement, to leave his successor a diocese that not only is financially sound, but spiritually sound as well.
We don't have a lot of time left, but before we let you go, I do want to take note of a special milestone. I know earlier this week you celebrated the 35th anniversary of your ordination. What comes to mind as you reflect on your time in ministry?
Well, how God is good, how God is God of surprises. On my ordination day, I didn't know what 35, 50 years ahead would look like, but it's been quite a ride. My path has not been that conventional, so I've really had an enriching priesthood. And one of those being Catholic schools. And that's really the next step for family parishes as well. I'll leave you with that, looking at how our Catholic schools relate to these families as well to ensure their future.
Well, Monsignor, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you joining us, especially on your vacation.
No problem. Have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too. God bless. The Swiss government is giving over 5 million Swiss francs to the renovation of the Swiss Guard barracks at the Vatican. The projected designs of the barracks include 3 buildings, the Guard's housing, administrative offices, and communal spaces such as the library. This is the first major renovation since it was first constructed back in the early 1800s. Twitter and Facebook are lighting up with happy birthday wishes for Pope Francis, who turned 84 today. From the Archdiocese of Albany, New York, to the Archdiocese of Bombay, India, and the President of Italy, all wishing a happy birthday to the Holy Father. Even the head of the Church of England tweeted, "Happy birthday to my friend and dear brother in Christ, Pope Francis. Thank you for your joyful and humble leadership that bears witness to the love of Jesus Christ." And before we go tonight, some of your nativity scenes right here. We start off with the Nelson family in Golden, Colorado. Joe, Matilda, Jack, and James say it was purchased online and repainted. Joe built the stable and the manger. Beautiful. Okay, next we head to Ireland. And Patty Cahill, she shows us the creche that is in the hallway of her home. Love that. And here's a nativity scene that was purchased in Bethlehem. It was sent in by Elaine Anding from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Also very gorgeous. Wow, look at this one right here. This is from Peter Mancini in Felon Falls, Canada. He shows us this nativity scene that he made for St. James Church, and it is in honor of his father, who used to make the scene for his family. That is great. And finally tonight, William Clark in Wheatfield, New York, shows us a nativity scene that he says he made back in 2003 based on one of his father's that he made back in the 50s. This year, it sits right in front of the Good Shepherd Church in Pendleton, New York. That is absolutely gorgeous. And please send in your crash photos to our EWTN News Nightly Twitter or Facebook pages, or by emailing EWTN News Nightly at EWTN.com, and you can see them featured right here on News Nightly. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.